For today's meditation, we are reading from Joshua chapter 10, verses 6 to 15. And the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, "Do not relax your hand from your servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites who dwell in the hill country are gathered against us." So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you." So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal. And the Lord threw them into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon, and chased them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon, and struck them as far as Asekah and Makkedah. And as they fled before Israel, while they were going down the ascent of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Asekah, and they died. There were more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel killed with the sword. At the time Joshua spoke to the Lord of the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and the moon in the valley of Ajalon." And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Is this not written in the book of Jasher? The sun stopped in the midst of heaven and did not hurry to set for about a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, when the Lord heeded the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. If we love God, all things work together for our good, but may not be to our comfort. Joshua learned this important lesson in his encounter with the Gibeonites. It was true that the Gibeonites deceived them into believing that they were coming from a faraway country, and Joshua, without consulting with the Lord, had made a covenant with them. Though this was an error from the part of Joshua, God used it to the good of the Israelites. For when the kings of the south of Canaan heard about this treaty, they joined together to fight the Gibeonites. Verse 5, and the 5 kings of the Amorites, and the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with all their armies and encamped against Gibeon and made war against it. These were cities that the Israelites were to conquer, just as Jericho, Ai, and other cities of Canaan. The alliance of these 5 kings to fight against the Gibeonites and the desperate call of the Gibeonites for aid led to the opportunity to defeat them all at once. Joshua honored the treaty that he and the princes of Israel had made in the name of the Lord. God gave this promise in verse 8, "Do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you." He and his men marched all night from Gilgal, about 25 miles, mostly uphill, as soon as they were summoned. This is a picture of faithfulness to one's word, which merited God's commendation. In these battles, we may understand some valuable practices and strategies that are necessary in fighting the evil one. Number 1, though the promise of victory was given to them by God, they had to be diligent. We also may have to let go of our sleep and keep going in order to possess what God has promised. Number 2, the Lord told them that he had given all the 5 kings and their armies into Israel's hands. When we follow the Lord into the battle, we can expect assistance from the Lord. The Lord threw down large hailstones on their enemies, and many of them died. Joshua also realized that as the day drew on, the approaching darkness would put an end to their pursuit and allow their enemies to escape. Holding on boldly to God's promise that he had given every man of their enemies into their hands, he prayed to the Lord and commanded the sun to stand still. This is like the faith of Peter, who slept between two soldiers in the prison the night before he was to be executed by Herod. Peter had already been assured by the Lord that he would at least grow old before he was taken to his death. In John 21:18, the Lord said, "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." Peter knew that he would be delivered, for he had to grow old before he died. Number 3. Joshua reminded his army not to be sidetracked while pursuing the enemy kings. In verse 18, and Joshua said, "Roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by it to guard them. But do not stay there yourself. Pursue your enemies. Attack their rear guard. Do not let them enter their cities." In capturing their kings, they were not to let the enemy escape and fortify themselves in their cities. They were to defeat them while they were still in the open. For the Lord your God has given them into your hand. There are large victories in our lives, but we must keep going single-mindedly so that we may round up the numerous smaller sins that entangle us and burden us and hinder us from following Christ. Number 4. As a symbolic gesture of their victory, Joshua asked his men to come near. "Put your feet on the necks of these kings." Then they came near and put their feet on their necks. And Joshua said to them, "Do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord will do to all your enemies against whom you fight." They were to show no mercy to the enemy. Sin attempting to reign in us after we have become the people of God is not admirable, nor does it merit our sympathy in any way. We are to despise and hate it and stamp it out with all our strength. For the Lord has promised us, sin shall not have dominion over you. Number 5. As he fought against the other kings, we read the same line repeatedly. They struck them with the edge of the sword and devoted to destruction every person in it. He left none remaining. We also read in verse 42, and Joshua captured all these kings and their land at one time because the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. We see a perfect blend of God's sovereignty and man's responsibility here. He and all the men obeyed the Lord in everything he had commanded, and the Lord fought for Israel. We are co-workers with God. The battle belongs to the Lord, but we must throw ourselves into the battle. These battles demonstrate for our sakes that faith in God's promises prompts every believer to go out and fight the enemy, having put on the full armor of God. Even when they fight and win their battles, their boast would be that the Lord God of Israel fought for Israel. Let us show that same faith and determination to press on to overcome the sloth and lack of trust that trip us up. Let us fight against the influence of sin in us, against the snares of the world and of flesh and the devil until we overcome, so that we may walk in holiness and in peace with all men as such as lies in us. God bless.